I told you.
Yeah, you did.
I mean, that wasn't meant to be a I told you so.
Yeah, she didn't say so. Level. Hello,
Well,
Matt.
Is match a thing?
Yeah, I mean, if my level and yours need to be kind of the same. Right?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, match. I thought you were using match as like a word like cheese for camera. You know, like
okay.
I thought that was maybe like an audio sound that you say when you're in audio.
I think I'm settled. Yeah, I feel settled. All right.
Welcome to In the Act. It's a program on process in the creative life. Creativity does not just start and stop with artists. We all make aesthetic or guiding decisions. Our aim is to talk through the process and investigate how we choose to express ourselves and to live creatively. We're talking with people about their lives, and that's the subject of our show. Broadcasting from the studio in Mead Public Library in Sheboygan, Wisconsin, I am Erica Hunsinger, and this is In the Act. And today's guest on In the Act is Susan Barnett.
Hello.
Hello, Susan. So glad that you made it in, that we connected. I know that you're in the process of a lot of things. So, and that's, I think, one of the reasons why I wanted to have you in too, because you epitomize in my head like the balance of creativity and life and work and trying to find the right paths for yourself and continuing for growth and movement to fortify. And I love that about you.
Thanks. I feel it's funny because when I look back on my path, like there's so many branches and I'm about to move for the 7th time in just over 5 years right now.
That's so crazy.
Yeah, I've been seeking roots all this time.
Yeah.
Just things have, I don't know, things have changed and I've had to react to them and respond to them. And,
right.
And right now, I'm getting ready to move to Cody, Wyoming in just a couple of weeks.
Wow!
And I have a new job as the curator of the Scarlet Curator of the Whitney Museum of Western Art, part of the Buffalo Bill Museum complex.
That's so cool!
I am so excited.
Oh my gosh, I bet.
Yeah. But it's just been a really interesting journey and. I had to actually look at my resume to figure out how many times I'd moved in the last 5 years because it just gets confusing sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Luckily, I have the resume, so I can kind of keep track of where I was when.
I mean, for sure. Your mind must be just spinning. And as someone who has moved not quite as often, but pretty much like when I was in Chicago moving, I had to move every 3 years because I would I'd move into a neighborhood or space and I would either move my studio or apartment every 3 years because rent would go up. I wouldn't be able to afford it and then move to another space. And so I understand, like, and people used to say to me, oh, you must be so good at moving. Yeah. Now you're just like this must be easy for you. And it's not.
It never gets easy.
It's not
easy.
Yes,
you get good at it, but it doesn't get easy. In fact,
absolutely.
I was under and unemployed for a year and a half after being laid off from my last curatorial position in Billings, Montana, before I moved back here. And a woman reached out to me. She was moving for the first time since the 1980s.
Wow.
We had met at the museum. She had an art collection. She was concerned about that. She said that she's just stressing about having to move and how to figure this out. And my name popped into her head. And I ended up having a 3-week gig to go stay with her and help her through the process of getting her moved together.
Whoa.
I never realized that was one of my superpowers.
It is now.
But yeah, I guess it is.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Because I guess you'd have to gather tools together that help with the structure of all of that process.
Right. Think through exactly kind of the order of the process and thinking about, like, don't stress about the middle stuff. Like, get rid of the obvious stuff, the junk that you really don't care about.
Yeah.
And pack the stuff that you really love carefully.
Yeah.
And then don't worry about the middle so much. It'll kind of sort itself out because, you just get bogged down in that.
Oh, that's so interesting.
Yeah.
That's an interesting way to do it.
I did get bogged down in a box of memories the other day, though.
Ooh, I mean, as one does.
Yeah. I found a letter I'd written to a friend in around 1980 and never sent. And so I shared it with her, and then we had a great phone conversation.
Oh my gosh, that's so cool. I love that.
It was really fun.
How did you decide to share it with her?
I read through it, and then I just, I had to. I photographed it and texted her. And then she called me, less than a minute after I'd sent it.
I love that. Yeah. Great.
Yeah, it was
great
really fun.
Choices, to try and sometimes it doesn't matter time.
Yeah. Yeah, it just kind of brought us both back to that time. And
cool.
Yeah. And I found some other fun stuff that I
gift.
shared with her while I was at it, like a list of what to bring camping. And she texted back with a laugh that I had alcohol under the optional category.
Nice. Nice.
Yeah. Anyway.
Well, so we met when you were in one of your iterations of your professional life as a curator, right? Specifically for the arts industry, or for the...
So I was hired. It was actually the first career-related job that I had gotten after my master's program. I went back to school I graduated in 2011 at University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee.
Okay.
Got a degree, graduate degree in art history.
Great.
And museum studies certificate. And then I got this amazing job at the John Michael Kohler Art Center as I was called project specialist. And it was definitely in the curatorial department and very curatorial related. But I worked on the 40-year anniversary of the arts industry program.
Right.
And so I was a primary researcher. I got to reach out to interview, survey the 400 artists who had been through the program at that time. And
there had been 400.
400
in the pottery
time.
And in the foundry?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Wow.
Since 1978, I believe, was when it was started.
Wow.
And it was interesting also kind of to learn about the parallel trajectory of Ruth Kohler and Herb Kohler.
Oh,
and,
yeah.
Because Ruth Kohler, of course, was the founder of the arts industry program in partnership with Herb Kohler,
her brother.
Yeah. And it was one
cool
of
partnership.
The amazing moments was the opportunity to be in the room with the two of them interviewing him.
Wow.
And just to observe their relationship and the power that the two of them exude. Amazing.
Oh, for sure. I bet. Yeah.
But,
And the creativity.
Absolutely.
They're just Ruth was just a force.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I'm so glad that she
calm force,
she got
though.
to see the art preserve, pretty much realized
Absolutely.
before she left us. 'Cause what an amazing space that is.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, it was a fascinating, journey, investigation into the creativity of those artists and the impact that a residency potentially has. It also gave me insight into another area of Ruth's brilliance. It seemed, although, yes, there's a committee that decides, how to bring people into the arts industry program. Yeah. In the end, so much of it was Ruth's intuition. And she was able somehow to know when an artist was just on the verge of something and needed this little push, and sometimes the arts industry program was just that for them. And artists talked about things like, being in that studio, particularly in the pottery, and seeing trainloads of toilets and sinks going by, and feeling that pace in their bones and wanting to compete with it, which on one level they knew was completely impossible.
Totally.
On the other level, it just pushed them to a new level. And some of those artists really learned to partnership with industry in the future in order to increase their production, or came to terms with the idea of a studio model, not having to physically make every object themselves, to be able to stand back and just design, or to work with a group of people to kind of emulate more of that factory model. model.
Yeah. Well, and the associates there really, I think are so amazing for the artists to partner with and like talk through process, material, model things.
Yes.
They're just terrific.
Yeah, they're such a source of knowledge and
craftsmanship.
And at the same time, I think that the artist being there really was a huge job perk for them because
for sure
it just brought something that broke the monotony of the toilets and sinks and toilets and sinks and toilets and sinks.
Sure.
And showed them new ways that they could challenge those materials and processes. And together they worked through things that were seemingly impossible and solved them. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow,
like one of the ideas that one of the artists came up with that I always thought was a real shame it never went into production was a luminescent glaze, like a glow-in-the-dark glaze.
Oh, cool.
I mean, wouldn't you love to go to the bathroom in the night without, having a nightlight or anything and 100%. The fixtures are just glowing?
Yeah.
I think that would be amazing.
That would be really cool. What was it like? Is it partly like dangerous to have like the luminescence? Is it like toxic material, radiation?
I don't know. I don't know what the formula was. But at any rate, it never went into production.
That's so great. Yeah.
So that was just a wonderful introduction to being part of a team in a museum. And we, I was a primary writer for the book that was put together on the history of the program.
Such a great book.
And that's one of my biggest career accomplishments still.
Oh, I
just feel so good about that.
Oh, great.
It was really fun.
What is the name of the book?
Arts Industry Collaboration and Revelation.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It took a long time to come up with that tagline, and that it would be Ruth.
Right. Yeah. Totally. Yeah.
But that was so much what that program was and continues to be about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then from there, I mean, the trajectory, do you mind talking about this a little bit? Like,
no, that's fine.
So from there, this like really amazing opportunity, I feel like there were so many other like wonderful opportunities and things that people found you or you found them. It was like this meeting.
Yeah.
Like you were in Erie and Montana you were a framer for like, I don't know how many years. And was it Missoula? Or Billings or
after Arts Industry, I was living in Milwaukee and city of South Milwaukee, but Milwaukee anyways.
Yeah.
I worked with John Shannon for a while as he was a collector and he had a dream of starting a museum, and his collection really needed quite a bit of work to get into the place where he was ready to put in place museum structures. And I worked with him, and we hired a couple of women who were just out of grad school to help. And we inventoried and cataloged and properly stored a collection of about 3,000 objects.
Wow.
Including his wife, who's an artist, Jan Sayre's prints and paintings. And then he went on to open the warehouse in Milwaukee.
Oh,
so
okay.
I've worked on kind of the foundations of bringing that to life. And then I got my first job as full curator, really senior curator at the Erie Art Museum in Erie, Pennsylvania.
That's right.
I loved that job, loved the community. It was really just a fun experience.
Yeah.
Fun to live on a different Great Lake.
Sure.
And,
Right.
And to get to garden at Zone 6. It was such a luxury.
Because you've been at Zone 4 or 5?
I think here in Sheboygan, we're marginally Zone 5. I brought you a thornless blackberry plant today, which is a Zone 5 plant. So it'll want to be in a slightly sheltered place.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Gotcha. Will do.
Yeah.
Because that's your other love that we'll we'll get into.
Lots of love. Yeah. And I had I lived in Butte, Montana for quite a while, which was zone 3. And so just moving to zone 4 where I could grow things like, I don't know, lupins or something other than conifer trees seemed like such a luxury.
That's so funny.
So zone 6 was really fun. And getting to work with a big encyclopedic collection was really fun. The director of the Erie Art Museum hired me as part of his retirement strategy. He had been both director and curator. Wow. He made it 49 years before he retired.
Oh my gosh.
And he really wanted to see the curatorial in good shape before stepping down. So I was actually hired before the new director. And then unfortunately the new director didn't work out so well for me or for the community. And I ended up needing to leave again after a year and a half.
I mean, that's a big upheaval then to get this important job, like dream job, and then to have to really shift gears. So it's like planting your roots, thinking you're going to be there for a substantial amount of time, and then having to shift gears. That's a really, really hard thing to go through.
It is. And I'm very intentional in a job like that, especially in a new community, of really trying to immerse deeply in the community and connect and make friendships. And I guess, I'm so glad I did. I mean, it's kind of like, it's better to have loved and lost than not to have loved. It's like that, right?
Yes.
And I do still have really dear friends there, even if I don't get to see them other than, Facebook mostly.
Right.
But yeah. And also just this serial compulsion that I hope I've drained from my life of buying houses and restoring them.
I know.
I had the most beautiful house there, mid-century modern, 1950s, with windows in the living room that sloped out. And it was just a beautiful space. Aqua and pink fixtures in the bathrooms.
So pretty.
And just really restored it completely and then put a for sale sign on it.
I mean, so much work.
Yeah. And planted perennials. I always plant perennials with, just in, I guess, eternal optimism that I'm really going to grow roots.
Yes. Yeah. Well, I mean, it's so interesting because it's like you're a bridge and a rooter for the next person.
I suppose.
In that time. Mm-hmm. We just put it that way.
Right. There. That's nice. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
But then, so as soon as I realized that job was falling apart, I started to look for other opportunities, and the first thing that I saw was curator of the Yellowstone Art Museum in Billings, Montana. Oh. I had lived in Montana for 25 years. I got my my bachelor's degree in fine art printmaking from Montana State University.
Oh, okay.
And so I know the artists of that part of the West. Yeah. They were my teachers and peers,
right.
And I understand that culture. I've lived on a ranch when I was there in the middle of absolutely nowhere.
Really?
Experienced 50 below and the water freezing and stuff like that. Wow. And lived in Butte, Montana for 15 years, which I feel like that's one of the things when I'm interviewing for a job in the West, I bring that up because it really establishes my Western cred.
Your cred.
Yeah.
Nice.
So Butte is where the copper ore was mined that was smelted in Anaconda. And it's a super fun site. And it's just a really interesting city that kind of mixes this gilded grandeur from the 1800s with just complete crumbling and decaying toxic waste and such a really interesting mix of people there too.
Cool.
It's a place where you can't make fun of Butte in front of me, but I wouldn't care to live there again either.
Right.
Anyway, yeah.
Welcome back to In the Act. I'm Erica Hunsinger. We are here with Susan Barnett. And I was just reading something in a book that was talking about artists really loving the putrid, and that we're that we really also are sort of like alchemists. I think it is what is painting, or what painting is, by James Elkin or something like that. But that we find the beauty in like the dilapidated, like, or the skim on top of like a scuzzy pond and how beautiful it is, or, toxic things that the unusual, the things that maybe people pass over and we take a closer look at.
You're absolutely right. Yeah, I think, which of course is coming out of the idea of Butte, Montana.
Yeah, in a nice way.
Yeah, in a
very nice way.
But I mean, you look toward the East Ridge in Butte, and the ridge has been completely terraced by mining, and
Wow.
you can see the cuts in that land. You can see sometimes streaks of heavy minerals washing down, like bright teal and dark oranges on the more or less white desert terraces.
Crazy.
And you almost feel guilty for finding such great beauty in it. And at the same time, there's so little humidity there, so the sky is just this crystalline blue a lot of the time against that.
Yeah.
And then there's the actual pit that has filled up with toxic water, like a pH of 1, and probably thousands of snow geese have perished in it over the years. They think it's a lake, a stopover, and they are unpleasantly surprised. But again, like the colors of that, I can't help but, in a guilty way, really responding to it also.
Right. Yeah.
And, same with the town itself, with the grand architecture that's also crumbling.
Yeah.
Yeah. It is a place that I really respond to visually.
Interesting.
So I ended up, that was the first job I applied to after being laid off in Erie. I applied to the Yellowstone Art Museum as curator, and I kept thinking, I wish this wasn't the first one. I wish I'd had some more time to get my materials in order, to practice interviewing, and so on. But
because that's a whole anxiety stuff. I mean, you're talking about it as if it's in cogs in a wheel, by the way, and just like in this fluid motion.
Right.
And that's hindsight. But oh my gosh, like all that is so
it was scrambling to put together the first application letter to get my resume updated.
For sure.
And that, by the time I looked, that ad had already been posted for close to a month. So, I knew I had to act really fast.
Sure.
And so I was just thrilled when I got, a phone interview, and then I got an in-person interview. And at that point, I felt like, okay, I'm good. This feels really right.
Oh, I love that.
So I was able to move back to Montana in Billings, which I'd never lived in the eastern part of the state before. But there's just some really beautiful places around there, and I very much enjoyed that.
Beautiful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the tallest mountains in Montana are about 2-hour drive from Billings. So it was a great place to go, and
because you love walking, and you have such a love of the outside and appreciation, and you've touched on it just a couple times with your knowledge of like, I'm not even going to get it. Level 3? No. What is it called? What are the levels in gardening called?
Oh, the zones.
The zones. Sorry,
the climate
zones, not level. Yeah. I mean, that's really a part of who you are too. Is like that gardening and planting and creating the environment for yourself, and also going into the environment, into the culture, into the land
Very much so. Really
explore.
Engaging deeply with the space that's around me, whatever it is.
Yeah, right.
Urban or rural. And like here, I am so deeply connected to Lake Michigan.
Oh, tell me about
it. The duplex that I own here, which was part of why I came back, is because it's a place that I can easily live. It's about 5 blocks from the lake.
Yeah.
And I just try to walk down there every day. And I've figured out how I have a 65-pound sea kayak, and I figured out how I can load that myself. I got rollers on the back, and I have a little cart, and so now I can independently get my boat into that water.
That's awesome. No way. Yeah. And you kayak on Lake Michigan?
After having been married for 39 years, it's quite a milestone to be able to launch my own boat. Anyway.
Hey, absolutely. It is real. That's a really tough thing that you also navigated and negotiated the past couple of years.
Yeah, that
the last 5
for sure. Yeah, the last 2 years have had a lot of changes. So it was, I think, 2 days ago. I took my boat down to the ramp and put it in, and then paddled just along the shore.
The ramp
down to Pigeon Creek by North Point. Or I think it's
okay. Yeah. All
right. A little boat ramp there.
Yeah.
And then paddled up into Pigeon Creek a little ways and then back, and it was really lovely.
That's great.
Saw a kingfisher and
it's great birds.
Yeah.
Cool.
So I'm trying to get as much Lake Michigan time in right now as I can. I also really enjoyed cross-country skiing in the Kettle Moraines this winter.
Oh, nice.
It
wow.
is nice.
Do you have your own skis?
Yeah.
Yeah. Wondered if you were renting or,
No.
Yep. You got your own, of course. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I love that sort of like exploration, that real connection, and that you really carve out time for yourself and create it. It doesn't even seem like you need to motivate yourself to do it. It's just part of who you are, and it's part of your whole system of moving forward.
It is, yeah. And I think sometimes I'll feel just a little antsy or not fully myself, and then I'll get outside and maybe ride my bike down to Kohler and back, or just walk down by the lake. And that
recenters
you? It really
you?
centers me, absolutely.
Wow.
Yeah. And that's been, right now I have no schedule. I was working at the Sheboygan County Historical Museum.
Such a great museum.
It is great. And I'm so grateful to them for hiring me despite being overqualified, and older. And, and I think I was able to do some things that will help move them forward.
Yeah.
And it really got me through a bad patch. So it was wonderful.
But
great. I had my last day the end of June. And so now I'm kind of in this a space with no schedule, and it's important for me to just get outdoors and take a break from the packing and the planning and all that stuff now and then.
Right, because we caught you in a little window of time.
A window kind of outside of time and responsibility.
Right.
Just a moment.
Right.
Other than the responsibility of somehow getting all that stuff moved to the other place, and myself in a new emotional place and physical place to start a whole new thing.
Right.
Yeah.
So within those transition spaces and times, I know that's like part of like going out and being outside and connecting with whatever, explore biking or kayaking or walking. Do you do anything like writing or journaling or drawing or anything?
Yes.
Smaller?
Yeah. And I actually wish that I had, I wish I had a daily writing habit. It may be something that I try to develop over time, because looking back at some of my old writing, I found it was a great way to connect with my old self and kind of remember things that that I want to still be in ways, right?
Right.
And also just of storing memories. And I think it's a really freeing way of kind of finding where you are is to explore it in writing. Yeah. The thing that, so when I got my first professional job out after my undergraduate, I was the executive director of a small museum and art center in Anaconda, Montana. And the organization was in the process of this incredibly ambitious restoration of the former City Hall building. And I kind of moved that project through. It burned me out in just 2 years, but it really did move through. They're in that new building now. Wow. And that's gone ahead. But I realized when I was in that position and it was such a consuming job that I couldn't make art at the level that I was comfortable with. I wasn't comfortable with like dabbling in it. And, and I was frustrated by not having the time and the focused energy to be able to draw and paint at the level that I felt I needed to commit.
Sure.
And it was a moment also where I had a couple of violinists play duets at an opening reception, and I happened to mention to them in passing, how much I enjoyed it, and by the way, I have a cello in my closet, haha, and they're like, "You have a cello in your closet?"
Yeah,
and they would not let go. They kind of dragged me. They dragged me to these casual rehearsal sessions. No big deal, during the summer. Just some people who play in the Butte Symphony, and just try. And I had to go back to my beginning books and like read the open strings and say, okay, this is a C, G, D, A. Wow. But it came back really fast. And the thing that was great about that, for one thing, I'd been thinking about getting rid of my cello, and I wanted to make sure this was something I really wanted to do before doing that. So I wanted to give it another chance. So they caught me at a great moment.
Wow. Fascinating how that happens.
I know, right? And music, I didn't take as seriously as visual art, so I gave myself permission to be bad at it. Yeah. And I didn't come up with this quote. I don't know who to attribute it to, but I heard somebody say anything that's truly worth doing is worth doing badly. And
I thought you were going to say, it's probably as everybody. Yeah.
And I've been able to do that with music and just let my perfectionism and my, desires to be at a high professional level, just let all that go and really just enjoy it. Yeah. And so playing the cello has come to be a kind of a thread of creative expression that I've kept with me since, since the late 80s. And I've played in numerous symphonies. I was the principal cellist in the Butte Symphony for about 6 years.
Oh, my gosh.
And then after moving here, I played in the Racine Symphony, Concord Chamber Orchestra. And then I love playing chamber music. Just getting together with 2 or 3 or 8 friends and reading some of the great things that have been written.
And chamber music is just a smaller group.
Smaller group, something that fits into a living room.
Right. Yeah. That's beautiful.
It is such a wonderful anachronistic way to spend your time. It's just lovely having a musical conversation with friends.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. And do you always read music or do you improvise?
After I was laid off from my position in Billings during COVID because for financial restructuring, and I went very
very difficult that you're moving through. But yes, I just want to tune into that moment. That's another big move.
Moment. And just during that very hard time of isolation from COVID to also lose my job, have to finish remodeling another house, sell it, get divorced. I moved in with a friend who I've known for about 40 years in Helena, Montana. Oh. And she has a relationship with a man who's a musician. He plays bass and guitar and, entirely 5 other instruments. And kind of, we called each other, we were our podners. We were, we had a little.
That's so cute.
We were a pod during the isolation period of COVID, which was wonderful. But
wow.
I started playing music with him and some of his friends, and it was super fun. And
that's awesome.
I think doing more improvisation with cello is something that I'd really like. I look forward to continuing.
Yeah.
Wow. I'm not sure what I'm going to find in Cody for a musical family yet. I know there's at least other people who work at the museum who play instruments, and I know I'll find something
for sure. Oh, absolutely, for sure you will. When you said that, I just want to backtrack a tiny bit. When you said anything worth doing is worth doing
badly or poorly, or however you want to say it grammatically. But yeah.
And could you talk a little bit about that premise or thought? Because I think that people are so tied to doing things right, and we want to do things right. I mean, we always want to, do it right.
Exactly. It was something that I started thinking about when I was at the John Michael Kohler Art Center, because I would call Ruth a perfectionist, to the point where sometimes a project just couldn't go through because it couldn't reach the level that was important to her.
Yeah.
And it was really difficult to work in that condition sometimes. Because it's kind of restraining to creativity. If you have to reach this high level, you have to be allowed to play. You have to be allowed to make mistakes.
Yes.
And because that's where so many ideas come from, and that's where it's where your creativity comes from, is that sense of just free play. And I was able to grant myself that in music, and I really try to bring that into all of my life. And just I love going. I haven't been able to schedule it as often as I like, but I love going to the life drawing sessions here in Sheboygan.
Oh yeah, at EBCO.
Right. Just drawing, and allowing myself to play with different media, and not worry about whether I'm correctly representing this person or not. Just playing with line and color and form,
and being in a little collective as well.
Being in a little collective is fun too. Yeah. I love being around artists and talking with artists. It's one of the things that I love most about curatorial work. And the idea of really understanding, or trying to understand, where artists are coming from and what their work is about, and then figuring out how to translate that in ways to be a bridge to their communities.
Welcome back to In the Act. I'm Erica Hunsinger. We are here with, or I am here, well, we are here with Susan Barnett.
Hi.
Talking about you liking to hang around with artists because of the sense of the creative navigation with play and openness, and that. I was wondering if we could kind of dive into that and connection with community response.
And I would say also, while we're on the subject of connections, the kind of nonlinear connections that artists are so natural in.
That's a lovely way to put that.
Yeah. I find that way of thinking so interesting.
Can you talk a little bit about what you mean by that?
I think that so much of art is artists seeing things that are right in front of all of us that are so obvious that we don't see them.
Yeah.
And also, just conjunctions, like they're putting things together that you just wouldn't normally think of being together, but somehow it sparks new meanings. And I don't know. I come from that kind of thinking, and I love that kind of thinking.
Yeah.
It inspires me. I also really like being around scientists because, it's the same thing.
It's the same thing.
Yeah. And my dad was a mathematician. And
cool.
I think, although that was not a path that I could take, I get that at the level where he was, it was a completely abstract and creative place.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's how I feel about physicists. I'm like, physicists are just artists.
They are.
They're just using concepts in ways that are like super creative, and it's the same thing.
Right. And the great discoveries in science, they aren't coming out of steps of logic. They're coming out of these creative juxtapositions and flashes of insight, just like artists experience in their work.
Absolutely. I totally agree with you. Yeah. And that it's not, that it's built on this backlog of information, but these aha conjunctions, right? You never know when they're going to happen.
Exactly.
You never know in the downtime when you're like walking on a path and you happen to see X, Y, and Z, or, and you put these things together. Somehow it triggers all the information then that kind of coincides, that creates the aha.
And
That's
I think
so
with visual art too, like maybe music as well, come to think of it, is it's funny. I think in writing and theory and art history and all those, if in philosophy we tend to underplay the physical component of things, but there is something about—
What do you mean by that?
The mind-body connection of making. I mean, we're very embodied as we're making, and that is also part of the creative process.
Right.
Yeah. And I think, some of that is like a physicist will be building on this knowledge base. I think as an artist, you're building on a kind of a physical knowledge base of materials and processes and technique. And, different artists use that in different ways, but it's still kind of that underlying structure to what you do. Totally. It's not, it's like Yo-Yo Ma, the brilliant and amazing cellist.
Yeah.
You watch him in performance, and yes, he's a virtuoso. Yes, he can play anything. He's a cello god, but that's not what you think about when he's in performance, and that's not what he's thinking about. That's just completely beside the point.
Yep.
And his playing is so effortless that he can just focus on the energy in the room.
Yes.
He can be
transcends
he's
like the
he's
notes
flirting with the violinists and the other cellists, and he's just channeling the energy of the audience and the conductor and the whole room, and it's amazing.
I mean, I'm going to just butcher the name again. It's Mikhail Krzyzewski or whatever. Like, I don't remember what his name is, but he wrote on creativity and on flow. And I think that's the idea of flow. Right. Is that you, and everybody has gotten into that place where you sort of lose track of time, that you're performing some function that you're professional at. You're really, really good at it, so you can disengage from the mechanics of how to do something.
Yes. To
then transcend and go into other states and sort of live between the action and the meditation of it.
Right. And just be completely in this space of possibility.
Yeah.
Where
and it can happen when you're cooking.
It can go any direction, and you can ride with it, whatever it is.
Right.
Yeah, that's an amazing place to be.
It is an amazing place to be. And I think once you're conscious of it, you click out of it.
Right.
Yeah. So it's a little annoying. And then I just think of like yoga practices where it's go back to your breath. And try and recenter and go back to your breath, acknowledge your thoughts, let them go, and then try and sort of get back into that rhythm.
Exactly. And don't beat yourself up for having those thoughts come in. Just, there it is. Okay, now I can let that go. It's fine. Yeah.
Right. Which gets back to your quote. Right.
Right.
Yeah. And that it's so important to have these failures in quotes, right? I'm going to call them in quotes because that it allows us to learn what doesn't go well for us, what we're good at within failure, what things we need help with, and get practice and find supportive tools around you then.
And working through those so-called failures is such a way to grow.
Yes.
And I think sometimes a real breakthrough will come in your visual work or your musical work by just pushing through those failures, basically, whether it's on the same canvas or the next one.
Right. And sometimes I'm like, how do you make failures? How do you make failures happen so that you can push through, in a safe way, in a way that feels safe to your integrity and safe to yourself.
I think
to grow.
It's being willing not to feel safe, though, to take risks.
Sure. Okay.
And to do things that aren't comfortable. I was also thinking of another music thing. I started taking cello lessons as an adult when I was living in Butte. And had a just really wonderful teacher who I just see a few times a year. And one lesson, I told him that I felt like I was getting better at forgiving myself when I made a mistake.
Oof, nice.
And he said that's not enough. You need to forgive yourself before you even make the mistake. Oh. And I love that. I love carrying that around into other areas. To get to where you because if you start focusing on what you just did wrong, you've taken yourself completely out of that flow, right?
Sure.
And you need to stay in that place of being completely engaged with the present and what you're doing and being open to what's unfolding.
Right.
And so you can't let your mind snap back into what just went wrong.
Right.
And if possible, just, like he said, forgive it before it even happens.
How do you do that?
I don't know. I'm still working on that.
Sure. Yeah. Right. Is that part of self-acceptance?
Right.
Oh, dear. That's an awfully big one. But I think that's what I try and focus on within this conversation, within the ACT podcast, is that trying to get to those sort of in-between spaces where it's uncomfortable and you have to make these decisions that you may not have, it's not linear. Right. It may not have been the way that you planned it or wanted it to be, whatever it is, micro, macro, whether it's a painting or a dish of food, or your home or your job. Your space. And so then once you choose differently or things have been chosen for you, how do you make those decisions? How do you make those decisions for yourself that are going to be best for yourself? And to forgive yourself before you make any, that's a really tough one.
Yeah. Yeah. And maybe even not even thinking of it as a mistake. I mean, with music, it's really hard not to, because especially if you're playing from the page and you've played a different note. I mean, it's just, it's nice if it happens to be in the same key. It's not a B flat. If it isn't, then
right.
But I've just had such a feeling of late of almost being moving forward with gears, and it's been an amazing space for me lately.
Yeah.
With, finding this new position and just a lot of things in my life coming together, and it's been really exciting, and I'm just enjoying that flow.
It's so super. And I know I've said this to you the last time I saw you, which was a couple weeks ago, but your earrings are they look like gears that are on top of each other, that sort of look like they go within this sort of mechanics
Yes.
of a flow.
And since you pointed that out, it's funny because I put them in a couple months ago, and I realized I can wear them to sleep, and I just haven't taken them out. And now I don't want to take them out.
Yeah, until you get to Cody.
Gears that might have come out of watches, and then they've been intermeshed. But yeah, it feels so symbolic of my journey right now.
Yeah,
these gears that I'm wearing in my ears.
I love that. Yes. And, and translating like those symbolic things out into our own lives is, I think, where sometimes art meets art, quote unquote, art meets us, right? Is like the things that are symbolic and important to us, we try and put around us. And those enhance and help us respond to the world within these sort of metaphors and analogies that we have associations to and connections with, whether it's with people or ideas or theories or
yeah, it is. That makes me think about, with all of these moves. One of the hardest things for me to move is my art collection, which represents so many connections over the years, because most of my art came from, people I went to school with and teachers I studied with and artists I've exhibited. And when I moved here to Sheboygan, I had, this huge stack of boxes of art in the living room, and I felt like I'm probably not going to stay here a long time. I need to find another professional position. I need to, and so on. But I went ahead and unpacked all those boxes and hung all of that art in my house.
Wow.
And it makes me feel grounded. It is part of, it's part of what connects me. It's the thing that's so familiar that makes wherever I am home, actually.
Sweet.
Yeah. And that'll be the last thing that I pack up before I get ready, for the movers to come. Because as soon as that comes down, my house won't feel like my space anymore.
Wow. That's beautiful. I really like that.
And moving to my new place, I have a rental house in Cody, which I felt miraculous to find.
Oh, good.
Because there was hardly anything on the market and nobody allowed cats. And it was I was imagining myself being in a public-facing job while camping in the Walmart parking lot with my cat. And it was just a hideous thought. But I found a house that's right on the golf course, so I'll be able to cross-country ski out my back door. And there's a mountain bike trail that starts there that goes up to some lakes in a city park, and then on to an infinite number of mountain bike trails in the mountains around Cody. And my house has wall-to-wall purple carpeting on the upstairs and harshly bright white walls.
Okay, wait, what color purple? Is it disco purple?
Plum.
It's plum. Okay, all right. That's better.
And I'm just thinking, I have area rugs and I have art. It'll be fine. It'll feel like my house once I do that.
Yes.
But yeah.
Oh, that's so good. I'm so glad that you have an image and a space, and now I do too, of like where you're going to be.
Yeah. And room for guests. So I'm excited about that. Cody's such an interesting town. Very Western. Over 2 million people pass through in the summer to the east gate of Yellowstone Park. It's about 50 miles away from that east gate through a gorgeous canyon filled with national forest. And then when the tourists clear out in summer, it's a town of 9,500 where everybody knows everybody.
No way.
It's going to be very interesting.
Wow. How amazing.
And it's less than 2 hours from Billings, where I was living before.
So you get to visit.
So I get to visit. Yeah. And I went back. When I was there for my interview, I drove up to Billings for an art opening, and I got to reconnect with all of my old art friends. And it was kind of a COVID fantasy of getting to hug everybody.
For sure.
Post-COVID. So it was just amazing. And it was lovely to feel how many connections I had for having been there in such a short time. So I'm really excited to go back and continue growing those connections in the West.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. That's a it sounds like you're really excited about it, and it feels very fertile. Space to be moving towards and to sit within. And
there's something really also really interesting that I have so much on my plate right now with just making this move that I haven't had the time to really focus on it. But there's a question that's just rattling around in my mind as I accept this position of curator of Western art.
Yeah.
What is Western art?
Sure.
And I'm just fascinated by that question.
Yeah.
And I'm really excited that they've decided to hire me as someone who has great strengths in contemporary art.
Yes.
Especially of the West. And how that's going to integrate with their collection, which has, some contemporary but really great strengths in the Western art of the American frontier.
Right.
And so I think the conversations between those ideas are going to be fascinating.
Totally.
And, bringing more diverse lenses to think about, what is the West.
Absolutely. You're like the perfect person for that. That's so cool.
And it's such an exciting moment there. There's a new leadership. The person who was in my position will be my supervisor. The director has been there for less than a year, I believe, and she came from being an intern there like 30 years ago.
Cool.
And she was the curator of the Plains Indian Museum that's part of the 5-museum complex. So,
how amazing.
It's just going to be, it's a very exciting time.
Totally. It is. And I'm so happy for you. And I'm so happy that you were able to take the time to be here and
yeah, me too.
get you in here to do this. And I wish you all the best, and we want to get updates on everything too.
Thanks, Erica.
Yeah. Is there anything that you'd like to say before you go that we didn't touch on or anything? Or
I can't think of what it would be.
Great. No, yeah. I feel like we went around a lot of different places.
A lot of paths.
I love the idea of you going into Yellowstone too and getting all the energy and the excitement from that. So
yeah, it's I really look forward to being there outside of tourist season.
Yeah, right. yeah.
It kind of like Cody. It's a completely different place.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Well, happy rooting.
Thank you.
And while you're rooting, I will be rooting my blackberry bush. Thank you very much for that.
I hope it thrives.
And if somebody wanted to get a hold of you, how might they do that?
I will be at the Buffalo Bill Center of the West in Cody, Wyoming, and I'm pretty sure my contact information will be on the website, or just ask the guards at the door.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you so much, Susan.
Thanks,
for being
Erica.
Here.
This was really fun.
Yeah.
In the Act is produced in the studios at Mead Public Library in Sheboygan, Wisconsin. More information on the web at meadpl.org.